So for all of you who are sitting out there wondering about more food, last podcast we talked about foods around the globe. You remember that, Dean? No, he's got nothing. He's just staring at me. And why am I surprised by this? I will tell you that we talked about food around the globe. We're going to be talking more about food around the globe today.
Do I eat it? Do I not eat it? Do I pass it around? I mean,
should I touch it, not touch it?
And what do I touch it with?
Yeah. And we've also got a listener, and they wrote to us and had a question, which is really kind of intriguing and interesting because it leads us into an area that a lot of people, especially people in the U.S., but I think in a lot of parts of the world, they don't really know or understand very well.
Oh, let's hear it.
Well, we'll get to it. Hold on.
Delayed gratification again.
And we will. And then we've got some other stuff. Torin, our producer's here.
Hi.
And hi, Torin.
Hello.
And what else are we talking about today?
Some etiquette around eating different foods. We're going to talk about more foods
Oh my God.
around the world, and then how do you...
Was that your idea, Dean?
Go ahead, Ian.
I had nothing to do with it.
Okay, great. So etiquette also, huh? All right.
And there's something with exploding. I'm not going to...
Okay, yeah.
Oh, we're gonna.
Right
we're
now, I'm
gonna,
frightened.
When we talk about this stuff, we have to explode some myths.
Well, okay then. Well, in that case,
Well,
guess
let's get
what?
started.
Guess what? Oops.
Your culture's showing.
And I'm Tom Peterson, and I'm here with my co-host, Dean Foster, who, as I read on a bathroom wall just last week, is an expert in cultures around the world. So, Dean, what I was dying to ask you about...
Dying to ask
Well,
me.
that may be extreme, but basically, yeah. That what I want to ask you about was fish. I just want to know if there's a cultural aspect that you can come up with here for fish.
Didn't we once talk about the ceremony of the head of the fish in China?
Uh-huh.
Right?
Uh-huh.
We did, where the honored guest receives the head of the fish because it's supposed to be the most tasty part of the fish, the cheeks, actually, the area right in front of the gills.
Now, do we really buy that, or is that... Look, if you had...
I don't buy it at all. I either buy the fish...
Oh, you have it
the
given
part
to
of the
you
fish.
because somebody offers it.
When I go in a store, I'm talking buying.
I see.
I'm
not talking about the
classic
actual
sense.
fish. I'm talking about the concepts. Again, I'm sort of looking at it in a sense of, okay, perhaps the cheek of the fish. And by the way, I'm going to be line up with the people who are going, wait, fish have cheeks? But if we go to the fish cheek and we're eating that cheek fish... No, wait, hold on. Fish cheek.
Fish cheek.
And if we're doing that, is it because it's really that good, like we're being sold, or is it because we don't have a lot, and this will encourage people by everyone agreeing that these parts of the head are better tasting?
Well, the scarcity issue, makes it very ceremonial, makes it very special.
So we make a concept that is adjusted and adapted over time, that more and more people will do it, so that you will eat this.
Yeah.
And you will actually use up the stuff they have.
The scarcer it is, the more special it is, even if it's,
not as dumb as he looks. Old Fish Cheeks Foster. Fish Cheeks Foster. That's not easy to say.
Fish Cheeks Foster. Now, how did you know that was what they called me in junior high?
Is it?
Yeah.
And how much do I know? I don't want to know why. Well,
but I'm thinking like the different kinds of foods that are out there, whether they're ceremonial or whether they're just day-to-day foods, they we are subject to these kinds of rules, the cultural rules and the economic rules, and which determines why we eat them or not.
There's also a use of fish in ways that isn't about eating it. That you can
what else do you do with a fish other than eat it?
Well, you can have a nice conversation with a fish,
and you'll always be right.
Decorative. How many people have fish tanks? And you have the feng shui that we've spoken about.
That's right.
Where you have that placed in certain positions and places, and there's a good luck aspect, if I may be oversimplifying it, but that kind of thing that goes along with it. And then there's the Moby Dick idea of the kind of massive fish and power fish, Jaws. That concept. I mean, is that cultural? I mean, is there an aspect to that says,
well, the fish I think plays a powerful role in a lot of Genesis myths.
Jonah and the whale?
Yes, Jonah and the whale, and these great beasts that are under the water. I mean,
Right.
it's part of classical Greek stories.
Sure,
and
sure.
The heroes and Homer's Odyssey and the encounters with the mermaids and the strange sea creatures that are lurking out there. I think it speaks to the unknown and the things that we do. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Sure.
It's been
Yep.
part of our literature. Yeah.
Yeah.
So eat it,
Hey,
if it's on your
what?
plate, eat it. Because
Eat that cheek.
right, because this
How
creature,
chic.
now it's kind of like once you eat it, then you know it. You've conquered it.
And you know what? Maybe there is also like eating we talked about things you were telling about, like eating you get the goat's eye or the
Yes,
tongue of
right,
something and
right.
things like that.
Well, and we were saying, I think in Kazakhstan, depending on the part of the animal that you're given,
Yeah.
that's been sacrificed in your honor, it's a way of acknowledging a certain aspect of you and your personality. So
Right.
if you're given the eye, that means you're very wise.
Yeah.
They see
Yeah.
you as very wise.
Yeah.
If you're given the tongue, that means you talk a lot. In a good way,
Ah.
I guess.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can
Yeah.
imagine,
Well, you took it that way, I'm sure.
what parts of the body I was given.
I don't want no, I'm not going to imagine that. I'm going to have incredible control over myself and not imagine that.
I was I just saw a Broadway show called Come From Away, which is about Newfoundland. And if you visit Newfoundland, one of the ceremonies that gets you into the community is you have to kiss a cod.
Seriously.
You have to kiss a cod.
Okay.
Yeah, a live cod,
Okay.
right?
This
On the
sounds
lips.
this sounds like some sort of weird dating.
Presuming
ritual.
that a cod has lips.
Well, well,
And if it's a French
I-
cod,
I
then
have.
then you
Oh,
get
boy.
more than just the lips involved.
I guess so. Well, if look, all the cods I dated had lips. Okay, so that's all I can speak to. But as a person who actually I actually have caught a great many cod. There are several different kinds.
So do they have lips?
Most I cannot remember any that I caught that did not have lips.
Did you ever kiss them?
I think that's personal between me and the cod. And if the
But
cod's
he's
not
not
speaking,
saying
I'm not speaking.
no.
Maybe that's correct.
But to this idea of doing challenging, difficult things,
Yes.
right? Like in some tribes in East Africa,
Yeah.
to show your manhood, and it's often part of a rite of passage.
Yeah, coming of age. type
Coming of
thing.
age.
Yeah.
You'll cut the vein. The elder will cut the vein of a cow, and cows are very, very valuable and very important aspects of daily social life. There, the more cows someone owns, the wealthier they are, the higher the status, etc. So you cut a vein of the cow and you collect some of the blood, and then you drink it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's a tough one.
But how different is that really from black pudding?
Well, that would assume I'm actually going to eat black pudding. So,
Right, and which is not, we don't have to go to Africa to see this. I
No.
mean, this is
That's right.
a fairly staple dish in England and Scotland, right? Black
Right.
pudding, which for the listeners is basically congealed blood,
Right.
and prepared in a sort of a tasty
So
way.
to answer your question, just logistically, the difference is it's congealed
and cooked.
as opposed to being warm and runny.
Right.
Is anyone still listening to us?
And
I'm
tell
not
me
listening
about
to us
haggis.
anymore.
Tell me about haggis. I've had it. I've been in, I've been part of a ceremony, and I know people like it. And
Well, Torin, you've had haggis.
I have. It's delicious.
Okay. And do you remember what was in it? Did you know what was in it when you ate it?
Yeah, stomach beef stuff. It was good. It was tasty, whatever it truly was.
Okay,
You spice
stomach
it up, and it's inside the stomach, right? Of the
Right.
It,
They give it
a
it's
sheep,
in the stomach
right?
lining. Yep.
Yeah.
And you go in there to get
which is kind of like what
It was good.
I remember growing up. Part of the food from Eastern Europe that we had, again, a ceremonial food,
right.
was kishka, which was
Kishka,
stuffed
yes.
intestine.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, what's surprising now, that's the whole concept of now. Here's a very basic cultural aspect that even I can talk to. It's the old "don't judge a book by its cover" type of thing. Because if Torin is saying that there is this thing, which I'm imagining doesn't look all that great, but when you eat it, you like the taste of it. Now, if that's true, then your first reaction, you would assume, also, you know where it came from. Your first reaction is, seriously? I'm supposed to eat this? And yet you eat it and then go, oh, this tastes good, if you can do that. But people can't necessarily get by what they see.
Or don't ask, and that raises a question that I'm often asked, which is, should I ask about this food that's being presented to me?
Sure.
Do I want to inquire?
Yeah.
And, I think the safe thing is, if you're ready to hear things that you don't really want to hear, then don't inquire. And if you're enjoying the taste, then don't ask,
Right.
But if you do want to know, get ready for any possibility, because that meat could be of any kind of animal.
Sure.
But it raises the issue that, non-meat eaters, right? They'll feel similarly turned off by any kind of meat that's presented. And so it's all relative, isn't it? And it's all basically what we're used to.
Well, you're mentioning, it sounds like many of my relatives. That's for sure. Okay, that just completely killed everything.
Wait a minute.
That was the haggis of jokes
that
right
sounded
there, I think.
cannibalistic. Are you talking about your relatives?
No, you said it's all
eating?
relative, and I went for the cheap relative joke. And then you decided
but I
to
was
throw
talking
me
about
under the
eating
bus.
meat. I was talking about eating meat. So it sounded like you were saying
well,
your
look, to
relatives
each his own, okay?
are
And I guess if
eating
it's a
each other.
relative, it is your own. So it's...
Are they eating each other? Are they... Is it but even cannibalism.
Where are you going with this? I'm really frightened now.
In Papua New Guinea
okay.
and in other places, not just Papua New Guinea, cannibalism is part of, in certain tribes, not all.
Right.
It can be in much of Polynesia, actually, traditionally. But it's about
traditionally.
But it's about taking in the qualities of the individual that you're eating, or one aspect of.
So you're saying it's being looked at it as almost an honor to do that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But like those hooded, the hoods you have to wear in southern France when you eat that particular bird that they serve you.
This isn't going to go to a dark place here, is it?
Oh yes, it's very dark on the hood. You
Under
can't
the hood?
see anything.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. The whole idea is to absorb the aroma of the preparation of this dish that's made with this very particular kind of bird that lives in that area.
It's a very small, delicate bird, and it's a delicacy.
Yes.
Right.
And then you take the hood off and you eat it, but you absorb the whole aroma of
using the sense of smell, which is very powerful. I don't. As a cultural
in
aspect.
many of the Andean cultures, there's the staple food is basically their version of a guinea pig. It's called cuy in Ecuador. And
I've heard that.
Peru.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Which is, I think a lot of U.S. Americans who've grown up with hamsters as pets, would find that objectionable. But,
I'm sure they would. Well, there's also the concept of eating dogs.
Yes,
which is done
happens.
in some cultures.
Yes,
right.
Yes,
and we've talked about the fact that
it's not that common, and it's not as ubiquitous as the urban legend of it is. But it does. Yes, it's part of.
It does.
It is
happen.
part of the diet.
But also,
there's
as we've spoken of before, there's also places that domesticated animals aren't the same. It's not like the dog and cat in the United States that is kept indoors and loved like another member of the family. That's in many countries, that's just not taking place. It doesn't happen that way. It's what I'm thinking right now is that all this eating talk has really made me hungry. So we're going to take a little break here. But when we come back, I want to I got a question for you about something that's coming up that I think kind of fits into all of this. And I think it's Torrance, a question from one of our listeners, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Well, then we'll do that after we come back. But for right now, we're going to get something to eat and take a little break. We'll be right back. Got any questions for us? Well, if you do, there's a couple of ways to get hold of us. First of all, on email. Our email address is oopscultureshow@gmail.com. And our handle on Twitter is oopscultureshow. Pretty clever, huh? So talk to us. All right, so we're back, and we are talking about foods, and we've got something coming at the time that we're recording this particular podcast. Coming up is the time of Ramadan, and that's one of the times that, like in many, many parts of the world, in different ways, there is a time of fasting.
So we're talking about not eating.
Right, and that's where we're going with this. So, Torrin, there was a question. I'm turning to you because I'm assuming you have the question.
I do, yeah. So the question is that somebody's traveling to the person who gave us the question. They're going to be traveling to the Middle East during Ramadan. And they're going to be doing some business with folks there, and presumably during kind of normal for them, for that person, kind of lunch time. And so the question was essentially they're wondering, because their hosts there are not going to be eating. They're going to be fasting, not going to be eating, not going to be drinking water for Ramadan. They're wondering what they should do. Is it okay if they eat something during their normal lunchtime? Is it okay for them to drink water? They mentioned, I remember in the question, they were saying, I really need to drink my water. I don't want to be dehydrated. So their question is essentially, what do I do in that circumstance?
Yeah, that's a good question. But you know what? I have a question first about this person. What are you doing going to do business during Ramadan in the Middle East?
Yeah, I think it was just planned for them. I don't think they had control over
well,
that.
whoever was scheduling things needs to get a little bit culturally tuned up, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to jump in and say that people don't necessarily, even if they are aware of Ramadan, don't necessarily know that Ramadan isn't the same every year, too,
right.
that it changes.
Right. You have to follow the Muslim calendar because it does change.
Right.
That's the lunar calendar. And so therefore it's going to come up on the solar calendar, our calendar, at a different time every year. But it's not a good time to be doing business in a Muslim country, particularly an observant Muslim country, such as many are in the Middle East. People are just not tuned into those colleagues who are observant, tuned into business, because you're supposed to be self-reflective. This is a time of spirituality. This is a time from sun up to sundown where you're thinking about your role with God and the cosmos and other people. You're not tuned in. And also, it's a blood sugar thing. You're fasting from sun up to sundown. And so if you're trying to do business with people who are getting a little low on their blood sugar, it's just not pleasant. People want to go home and break the fast. That's what they don't want to talk to you about business. Okay. Having said that, this person is obviously going nevertheless. And they are going to be there during the day while their colleagues are probably going to be fasting. All right. So the rule is, you certainly, as a non-observant or non-Muslim, do not have to fast. You can go back to your international hotel and have lunch and dinner and breakfast. But if you're with people who are observing Ramadan, you cannot drink and eat in front of them. You just can't. It's not the right thing to do. It's disrespectful. Now, I don't know what country they're going to. So there are many countries there in that region that are very observant, right? I'm thinking of Saudi Arabia, but then there are many that are very secular, and they know that non-Muslims might not be observing. So I would take my cue from them. If they invite you in, they sit you down and put a glass of water in front of you, and they don't have a glass of water in front of them, they're trying to be kind to you. I would probably not sip it in front of them. But if you needed to, there it is. And and they're making a very nice and generous gesture by offering it to you. I mean, maybe they'll even want to meet you at a restaurant. I can't predict that. But again, it depends on the country. But I would say generally stay away from eating and drinking in front of anyone who's observing Ramadan.
So probably this listener should make, in their mind, should be ready to behave in that fashion.
That's right.
Because after sundown, though, there is a celebratory meal.
Everybody wants to go home as quickly as possible to meet their family and friends to break the fast.
Right.
So, yes. And in fact, everyone oftentimes stays up late at night feasting with friends and family. I've had Muslim colleagues, admit to me that in Ramadan you don't lose weight, you gain weight because you stay up, all night long partying. Basically.
Eat a lot and then go to sleep.
Yeah, and then go to sleep, and then wake up before sunup to have a big breakfast.
Sure.
To get you through the day.
In order to be able to make it through.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, maybe they're actually putting on more calories than not.
Maybe, yeah.
But it's the timing of it that's important.
Right.
So if you can't be eating or drinking during the day, then you got to do it at your hotel. You can't do it out with your colleagues.
Right. Okay. All right. Good. I think too. I would imagine anyway that someone who's traveling there for a relatively brief period of time could potentially make the adjustment, knowing this is for that brief period of time. But somebody who's going for a period of time, I'm saying that I'm guessing a couple of weeks, might really have to consider what they're doing because they're not used to it.
Right. And Ramadan is typically, approximately a month long, again, depending on how the calendar falls. So that's a long period of time where people are deeply into this very special event. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a major, if not the major holiday in the Muslim calendar. So
sure.
Yeah, not a good time to be doing business there, but okay.
Well, it may not be something that they could put off. So
right.
Understandable in that sense. But okay, good. That's and we'll remind you too, anything like that or that you may have a question about, send them on in and we will, we'll ask Dean and he'll give you something. And if you trust him at all, go ahead and follow him. Personally, I'd be very wary.
We just make you sign a disclaimer. That's all.
Oh, yes. By the way, we are not responsible for anything that happens to you.
Well, I'm certainly not responsible for anything I say.
You've never been responsible for anything. That's for sure. And ever since I've known you, which is the year 4, wasn't it? I believe. Yeah. That's in the Christian calendar. Yeah. So anyhow, we've got there is the phrase.
So talking about.
That's okay. Interrupt. It's not a problem.
Was I interrupting?
No,
I don't mean to.
You didn't mean to interrupt. I haven't heard that before somewhere. No, but you did mean. Never mind. Go right ahead. Please continue.
No.
Okay,
please.
Good. I'll continue. No. What were you going to say?
Was that what you were going to say?
I was going to say, what were you going to say? Yes.
Oh, well, in that case.
Who's on first?
Right. So in that case, here's what I was going to say.
Oh, okay.
But I was going to interrupt you with what I was going to say. You didn't have to ask.
That seemed obvious, perhaps. Have you said what you're going to say?
What was I going to say?
I don't know. I have no idea.
I just returned from a trip to the Balkans.
Are you sure where you went?
I always have to think twice.
Yeah, well,
there's a lot of trips in there. Former Yugoslavia, but broken up now into many independent countries.
And names that, depending again on age and or interest in history, have been spoken about many times. There's a real chance that you've heard the names of the places.
Oh, this is very important. This is a major cultural area in the world. It sits on a major cultural fault line, which is the cause of tremendous historical conflict. And much of what we live with every day in terms of political reality is the result of the kinds of conflicts that have emerged in the Balkans.
Okay.
It's important to remember, for example, the capital of Bosnia, and Bosnia is one of these countries in that region, is Sarajevo.
Yes.
And Sarajevo, the 20th century began in Sarajevo, right? With in a sense, the beginning of World War I and the assassination of the Archduke, which was just, of course, a trigger.
There were many factors.
Right.
Yeah,
began and it ended there in the 1990s with the wars, the Yugoslav wars, most recently, and the terrible, terrible conflict in Sarajevo.
Right.
So, This is a major area that doesn't get much play in the U.S., but nevertheless, we still have troops on the ground there.
Yeah.
Right?
But I'm sure people don't
No.
other than people who have been in the armed services who'd be aware of that. But otherwise,
So I'm traveling
We don't know
through
that.
the beautiful, beautiful country of Bosnia-Herzegovina,
Mhm.
and it is physically just spectacular. Big mountains and clean running rivers, just a beautiful place. And I learned that one of the foods that people have as a typical food is like these sausages.
yeah.
A mound of them, little finger-sized sausages
Okay.
of meat, of minced meat. And this is something that you typically have for lunch. And you wash it down with a liquefied yogurt.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So first of all, I'm not a red meat eater. So it was, but I was going to be there and I was going to try it.
Well, I was going to say, what kind of meat are they?
Well, it's not pork because there's a significant Muslim population in Bosnia.
Okay.
Right? So it's mainly beef and chicken and lamb, of
Lamb,
course.
I was gonna say,
that was the main one actually, and it's spiced and it's very tasty, and it's often served with this different kinds of dressing, ivar, which is kind of a pimento kind of dressing. So that's very tasty. But when it was served with this liquefied yogurt, I had trouble with that.
You had trouble with it because of the liquefied yogurt, do you think?
The flavor was very tart for me.
Yeah.
I wasn't used to it.
Right.
I mean, people were eating it with gusto all around me, but I was having difficulty with it.
When they're giving that to you, are these separate things or are these already somehow put together?
No, you get a plate full of these sausage type things.
Right.
And then you get
Which I'm guessing look like what we would identify as like little wieners.
Yeah, but without the casing. It's just
Okay. Yeah.
just shaped
Okay.
into a little wiener size thing.
Okay.
And then you get a glass of yogurt with it
I gotcha. Okay.
to drink.
It's just a regular in a drink form.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
You couldn't do the drink, huh? But I mean, are we talking just? Was
That's
there
me.
something about it
That's
that
me.
bothered you?
First of all, I
or-
don't really even like milk.
Yeah.
All right,
Okay. So you're a freak.
So-
We go with that.
I stopped drinking milk when I was 10 years old.
Okay.
Until I drank
See,
it
I was
as
wrong.
long as
He's a
I
super freak.
I drank it as long as I had to.
Okay.
As long as Mom said drink it.
What did you use for a mustache on your upper lip?
Oh no, I didn't have to have it. I just.
Oh,
I
is
had
that
a
at 10?
mustache. Oh yes.
At 10.
Oh,
What a man.
Most definitely.
What a man.
Oh yeah. Well.
Well, yeah, we're laughing because we can see him.
You should be laughing because the truth is, I can't grow a beard. Really, you know? I mean, it doesn't come in full. I get little spots. You know, I get a little spot that grows well, and then the rest doesn't, and it looks like I have this strange.
It's
thing
turning
hanging.
into a medical podcast, and I'm already disgusted. I'm not going to be able to keep food down here in a minute. Well, I'm sorry about that. It's
About what? The mustache? Or,
about
or
your inability to grow a
or
beard.
the yogurt.
And because obviously it reflects on your manhood. But you could bite the head off of a fish.
Oh, absolutely.
See, so there you go.
And drink the blood from a cow.
Well, let's go get a cow and tap it right now.
And how brave was the first person to eat an oyster?
Yeah, that's a
Right?
good point. Yes.
I mean, that's an old saying, by the way. I didn't come up with that.
Is
but
that
it's
right?
True.
Well,
It's
I
true,
grew up
right?
on the shore here in New England, and
Out
I
of
don't
necessity,
ever remember
right?
hearing someone say, "How brave was the first man to eat an oyster?"
No, there's a lullaby.
Oh,
There's
is
a
there?
That all New England children are
Well,
lullabied to.
I don't.
That has-
I know one that wasn't. I'm feeling
That's
bad
unfortunate.
now.
I'm sure. Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure.
You know the little lullaby that went.
Oh, you're gonna give us a lullaby now, which is
No, I'm
fine.
not.
You're
No. perfectly
capable of singing. I'm not concerned about that. I'm just. Are we
No,
going
no,
to have to
but
pay
since
for
we're
this
talking
lullaby?
since we're talking about foods and what to do at the table.
What? Okay, what lullaby is this? Do you really have a lullaby here, or are we going down the road fantastique?
Let me go on here.
Okay.
How do you refuse something if it's presented to you and you don't want it?
How do you?
I think if you know ahead of time, and I think if you do your research, and you should do your research, if you know ahead of time the kinds of food that might be presented to you, then you can inform your host that ahead of time, that this is something that is not part of your diet, or you're not eating meat these days, or you're not drinking alcohol these days, whatever it is, right? And so everybody's face is saved. Everyone is spared the embarrassment of you not eating something that's served to you, and you're spared having to deal with that challenge. So if you can say something ahead of time based on what you might know is possibly going to be served, then
making it even easier for them
just
not to. But if you do it in that situation, then you're saying most likely you will not insult your host if you mention something about your own circumstances, that there's a reason that you're doing it. The only thing I would say is you better remember what you have said. At that point, you don't want to later on undermine yourself by doing something that would that you just said you couldn't do because of fill in the blank.
Yeah, right. Or at that point, I guess you'd be compelled to try it.
Right.
And
right.
That's the worst that can happen. So,
yeah,
if something doesn't look good, just move it around on your plate until you find something that does look good.
Sure. Let's take a break. While listening to this, you may think, hey, I wonder, well, if you have a question like that and want to ask us, there's a couple of ways you can do it. One would be through email, which is oopscultureshow@gmail.com. That's OOPS cultureshow@gmail.com. And then there's also our handle on Twitter, which is Oops Culture Show. That's OOPS Culture Show. I know. It's not original, but it works. Okay.
There are some myths that we have to explode.
Whoa.
The myths of,
yes.
Of how you're supposed to behave. Because there's lots of things we were discussing about unusual behaviors at the table, like putting the hood over your head when you're eating these birds from France and things like that. But also, let's explode some.
Go right ahead. Let's blow a few things up. Let's go for it. I'm on board.
Everyone thinks that the formal French meal is very fussy and you have to do things and you can't eat with your hands. Nonsense.
Uh-huh.
You have to eat asparagus with your fingers. It's probably one of the few foods in France, in a traditional French meal, that you can and should eat with your fingers. You pick up the asparagus.
Now, when you say you can eat them with your fingers, I'm assuming
as opposed to a knife and fork.
Right, okay. And you're meaning to pick them up with your fingers and eat them as opposed to eating both the asparagus and your fingers.
Well, no. The only way you can eat your fingers is by eating without a knife and fork. Well,
or if you're in Vienna.
I guess you could eat them with a knife and fork, but then...
Thank you, Taryn.
Are we going back to
I thought
the discussion
that was a little too high.
Of cannibalism?
I could flying over the roof of the building. We've gone from sausages to fingers. I think that's a logical progression.
It's not a big leap.
Look at your own fingers over there.
So you can you should pick up the asparagus spears and eat it with your hands.
So you're eating asparagus with your
bread
fingers
with
in
your
France
hands too.
That makes sense.
There's a lot of pretension around many of these traditions that this is the part that I'd like to explode. Right?
Perceived,
like if you go to Italy and you have to eat your pizza with a knife and fork. Nonsense.
Well, really? I didn't know. Yeah.
No, I mean, it depends on the size of the pizza and it depends on the kind of preparation that the pasta is.
Right.
But there are some places you would, but there are many places you would not. You would eat it the way you would expect to eat it, like in New York. I mean, you get a slice of pizza from the Sicilian pizzeria, which is about as authentic as you can get down the street, and you're eating it without a knife and fork, and then
I hope so.
But then you can walk into some restaurants in America where they serve you a pizza and they give you knives and forks, and like nobody else is eating it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's Chicago, though. The deep dish pie.
Like that's already a pasta in a class by itself.
Well, yeah.
It's not. It's a pizza that has morphed into something else.
I think we may see our northeastern United States regionalism start to start to show about that.
No, the Chicago deep dish pizza is fantastic.
Okay.
It's just nothing like a traditional slice of pizza.
No, it's not.
So, of course, you have to eat it differently because
better,
it's just a
That's
whole
me
other
saying
thing.
that. Right.
But the pasta thing, like, here's another pretension. Explode.
Whoa, hold on. Now there's explosions going off.
Pretension number 3, explode. You get a bowl of pasta, and you're supposed to, people think they're supposed to twirl.
I'm sorry. Did you say bowl of pasta? I'm having a little trouble hearing you. My ear's still ringing from the explosion. So,
and you think you're supposed to twirl it against the inside of a spoon.
So you're talking like spaghetti pasta.
But yeah. I'm sorry, like linguine, fettuccine, spaghetti. Right. The long noodle type.
Right.
And you're supposed to twirl it against your spoon.
Yeah.
Nobody does that in Italy.
Well, okay.
You twirl it against the inside of the bowl that it's served in.
Well, that makes perfect sense.
Well, you see, then why did it evolve into twirling against the inside of a spoon?
Well, I'm going to guess that because in the U.S., oftentimes you get spaghetti served on a flat plate, which makes it much more difficult to twirl than if it was in a bowl where you have that rounded edge.
Well, that makes sense, but then then it begs the question, why was it served on a flat plate?
And the answer is?
Torrin, could you look that
up? Sure.
There was an Italian diplomat who was stationed in New York.
Yes.
And he was stunned. He actually wrote a note.
On purpose? Someone stunned him?
Well,
doesn't seem the diplomatic thing to do.
Depends on the location in New York City.
It's possible. Yeah, it could happen.
But he wrote a note back home saying, I can't believe that in America, well, he was in New York, though, but he said, in America,
it's in America. Okay, go ahead.
They put lemon peel in their espresso.
Oh.
And that's because this particular fellow was from Milan,
uh-huh.
northern Italy.
Right.
But the culture in New York City, the Italian culture in New York City is from southern Italian immigrants primarily.
Sure. Right.
And southern Italian immigrants, Sicily, Calabria, okay, you have lemon trees.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a nice touch to add a piece of lemon peel to your espresso.
Right. So we're talking Little Italy.
Yes, which in Milan we don't do.
Right.
You don't get espresso with lemon peel. I don't even know if there are. Yes, there are lemon trees around Milan, but there's certainly it wasn't the tradition. And he was stunned. He said, "What kind of Italian tradition is this?" He didn't know that in the southern part of his own country, that's how they served espresso, and that's how it was being served in New York.
Sure.
So for him, it was kind of strange and maybe pretentious.
Right.
But we still enjoy our espresso.
Well,
with lemon peel.
way things are served throughout our country. Obviously, our country is much larger than Italy, but it's throughout our country. You'll find certain dishes. What we were already talking about, deep dish pizza, as opposed to the pizza that we have in the Northeast, and so forth. They're just served different ways.
And here's the question: so you're holding your slice of pizza.
You're holding your pizza,
and. As long as I'm holding my pizza and not your pizza.
Well, okay.
The question.
We're talking about eating with our fingers again here.
Now,
right?
Reading it with our fingers.
Yeah.
We're not a knife and a fork. Okay. Eating it with our
Certain
fingers.
Politicians have really heard about it here.
Now, still the question comes up: do we fold it? Or
we're talking about the pizza now,
the pizza,
right?
the slice of pizza.
Right.
Do we fold it?
Yeah.
Like the sides, like you would make a paper airplane?
Well, I don't think you want to make a pizza airplane out of it.
Well, some people fold it.
Well,
right?
yeah, and I think folding is an acceptable way to handle. Usually, if it's in danger of sliding off, what's on top of it, the oils, the cheese, things like that, if that's in danger of sliding off, then the fold, which goes lengthwise from the wide end to the narrow end, is the appropriate way to do it.
What if you ate it the other? What if you folded it the other way around?
And people have. I've seen people fold it the other way, and usually they become a mess. Yeah, it just kind of all runs out the sides because that doesn't make any sense.
And that's why we don't fold it that way. Like a lot of like Ethiopian bread. I'm thinking it's making me think of that.
Okay,
it's this big round tray.
Yeah.
And it's made to serve the entire table.
Okay.
And depending on where you sit,
Mm-hmm.
you're supposed to break off a piece of the bread
Mhm.
and dip it into the sauces and the meats and all the other things and pop it in your mouth.
Right.
And it raises the rule, and this is not pretentious, by the way. This is a rule, and it's practical. Whenever you're served communally like that, whether it's a big tray of one particular item or many different items, you only eat from the side that's in front of you. Don't reach over to another side.
Okay.
Because that side is for the person on that side.
Right.
Right? And it just gets kind of messy to be eating other than just the area that's right in front of you. But a lot of people, if you go to Ethiopia or you go to places in India where we're eating with basically communally like that, with our hands and communally served food, they're reaching all over the place. First of all, the food isn't any different in front of somebody else as it is in front of you.
No, isn't it though? Isn't it?
No, it's not.
Oh, come on. You always got that little bit better thing that I did.
If that's the case, it's because they're honoring you by giving you the scarcest and choicest things.
Okay.
So what you're getting is still probably the better parts of anything
you also
else.
probably shouldn't reach over and grab that from someone who got it served to them by the host.
Yes, you really
I'm just
shouldn't.
guessing on that one. But,
It's worth mentioning.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I did.
Don't. Yeah. Okay. It's...
And in the Middle East and in India and in places, we're talking about eating with our hands here.
Yes.
You eat with your hand.
Just one hand.
The right hand.
The correct hand, which is the
right hand. Keep your left hand in your lap.
Okay.
Just leave it in your lap.
And that follows more than tradition.
Which means you're breaking the bread, with your right hand. You're kind of like tearing it.
Yep.
And it's a little bit of a trick to do.
So you're saying you're a one-handed hand eater.
Yes, a one-handed hand. Didn't they have a song
hold
about
on.
that in the 50s?
Using one hand eater.
Yeah.
Because otherwise we're eating hands, the way I said it before again. And
you keep going back to that. I mean, maybe you know something about a culture where
there could be, you might like you said before, just don't ask. Because if you like what it tastes like, who cares?
So one
go
hand,
ahead.
Just the right hand.
And you're eating with that hand, the right hand.
Right, which can be a little bit of a trick because if you break bread, you got to do it with between your thumb and your finger and kind of tear it.
There's a talent to it.
You just get used to it. That's all.
Right.
And your hands are going to get messy.
A lot of talent is along
what
that
you're doing
line.
is you break the bread, then you dip it in the sauce, and then you pick up a cube of lamb, let's say, or some veggies, and then you pop the whole business in your mouth.
Yes.
So the sauce is running down your fingers.
Are we primarily back in the Middle East right now?
We're in the Middle
region?
East. Yeah, this is a traditional way of eating. Let's say at a Arab feast.
Okay.
I don't want to be that general. A Bedouin feast. All right.
Okay.
Certainly in India and South Asia,
the
traditional Indian meal is eaten with the right hand, with the hands. You'd not serve cutlery. There's no knives or forks or anything.
Right. Okay.
In Southeast Asia, you can get your food served on a big banana leaf, not even a plate. So you just get a big fresh banana leaf put right in front of you.
Yep.
And then the rice will be a little mound of rice, and then some of the meat, some of the veggies, some of the sauces.
I mean, in those areas, banana leaves grow on trees.
Yes. I think they grow on trees just about everywhere.
Do they?
Yes.
Yeah.
And in Southeast Asia, they're called banana leaf restaurants, actually. So it's an indication, first of all, you might be getting, it might be Muslim, right? And then it might also be, you're going to get food served this way. It's not even on a plate. And it's not even with knives and forks.
Okay.
Your hands are going to get messy. That's okay. There's usually a sink in the corner of the dining room where you can go and wash off your hands whenever
We're
you need
in
to.
Southeast Asia now.
Yes.
We're
Malaysia.
really bouncing around the world today.
Stay with me. Keep your bags packed.
I'm ready.
All right. Singapore, certain parts of Singapore, not the Chinese part of Singapore, but the Malaysian part of Singapore. Yes. So.
Well, that's kind of interesting. I mean, when you really think about that, with the whole concept of recycling, that goes around, a banana leaf plate is perfect.
It's perfect. And when you're all done, they just fold up the mess and throw it out,
and it becomes fertilizer.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. So I have no idea how we got here.
And you can lick your fingers because you got delicious rice and sauce and all sorts of things on there.
Right.
And it's fine.
Some people might be thinking, why do they only use the right hand?
And always only on the right hand. Because in these cultures, let's see if we can do this with as much grace
go ahead.
as
We'll
possible.
be back. We're going to go get something to eat while you figure this out.
Before the advent of modern plumbing
Yeah.
and modern toilet conveniences,
Yes.
the left hand is the hand that's traditionally used for personal hygiene.
Okay.
All right. So, and still today, you can walk into a bathroom and is basically there's no toilet paper, but there may be a bucket of water or a hose.
A hose.
And you just wash off and use your left hand and wash yourself off that way.
Right.
So you don't want to then go back to the table and use your left hand to eat with or pass food with, and traditionally it's become you don't pass important documents with your left hand
or shake hand or anything like that.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
Okay.
Which may be hard to, remember when you sit down, to just sit on your left hand. Don't put your left hand on the table.
Don't use it. Yes.
Right.
Don't coordinate it in. And that's a distinct difference between Western civilizations primarily and the other areas of the world that are influenced by that. I mean, I would think that's got to be really, really important to remember when you're involved in that area to not do it, because the other way around is there's no real impact. If you just ate with your right hand coming here, someone might wonder why you didn't use your left hand, maybe. But mostly it wouldn't have any real impact.
Right.
But the other way around could have significant impact.
I mean, it's a general rule, right? It does bend. Like if your colleague reaches over to give you an embrace with two hands, well, okay, then you can reciprocate with two hands, right? But generally in the course of a day, you avoid using the left hand for important exchanges.
Sure. Okay.
And
well done, by the way.
Certainly at the dining table.
Well done, because we all have the reputation for when we start getting into like toilet talk, or lack of toilet talk, or lack of toilet.
Talking about lack of toilet.
Yes, that we can. I was going to say really jump down a hole with that, but that's probably a bad choice. Or did I just do that? I might have. Yeah. Sorry. It's my role. That's what I do here. It's probably time to take one last break. Okay, listen. The way to get hold of us is oopscultureshow@gmail.com. And our Twitter handle is Oops Culture Show. Whether this is the first episode or the third episode or whatever episode that you've listened to, if you're still listening at this point, I think you might like this. And if you do, you should really subscribe. Because if you subscribe, these things will just show up for you, and you can listen to them whenever you want to. That's the best way to go, really, honestly. I know what I'm talking about. All right, so just subscribe through iTunes or through wherever you get your podcasts from. But do it today, okay? Subscribe. Thank you.
But here's the other thing I wanted to mention.
Yeah.
Eating with the fingers.
Yes.
Right. Also a Hawaiian tradition with poi. Because what's poi? Poi is that... There's the other rhyme I was looking for when we were talking about the Japanese toilet and the koi toy boy.
Oh, yes.
Poi.
You're going back to episode 1 now. If you haven't heard episode 1, by the way, do yourself a favor. Go and listen to episode 1.
It's the poi boy.
Koi boy. Poi boy. Isn't that a grinder or a Subway or a hero in the South?
Well, that's a poor boy.
Or a po boy.
Or a po boy.
Yeah,
but this
there
is
you
a
go.
poi
But
boy.
if you made it with poi, it would be a poi.
It would be disgusting,
po boy.
is what it would be.
And disgusting.
I'm sorry if anybody out there likes poi. I mean, I like poi too.
You've now alienated the entire po boy population.
But not in a sandwich,
And
Why don't
Well,
we could have a
see, you're
we could have
jumping
a
to conclusions. We've been here.
we
you
could
should
have a-
not read a book by its cover or judge a book by its cover. Hang on.
we could have a koi poi.
Don't read a book by its cover. It'll be much too short.
And you were
much
talking.
too short.
You were talking
No
about
depth.
about fish, and a koi is a fish.
A koi is a fish.
It's a cod, isn't it?
No. A koi is a koi is more like a goldfish.
Goldfish. It's one of these big
Yes.
bulbous goldfish.
Why, are you looking for lips again here?
So-
you have a situation you need to talk to somebody about, I believe.
we could have a koi sandwich,
Yes, we could.
and the server is a
The poi koi po boy.
boy. Right.
The poi koi boy po boy. Go ahead, say that 3 times. Yeah. No, it's not. Speaking of lips, I just threw mine out right there. How do you put an ace bandage on your lip?
You don't. You have to put it in a cast.
Oh. Well, yes, koi is like a goldfish. We would look at it and go, oh, that must be a goldfish, but it's really a little different. But you see them a lot in decorative pools that are outside. Thanks. That was the opposite of an explosion. I believe it was an implosion. And it's now a black hole that's sucking in everything around it.
Here's another.
Oh, here he comes. Are you blowing something else up?
Yes.
Okay.
What did I call those things that we were blowing up?
I have no idea.
Pretensions.
Oh, okay.
Pretensions.
Oh.
Right. Which is often what people do when they don't know the rules. So they think they're going to have to be super proper in whatever that means to them,
Right.
in order to do it right. And so here's another pretension, right? In Japan,
Yes.
you walk into a noodle shop,
Okay.
and everyone in Tokyo is having lunch at a noodle shop, or many
Right.
people, right?
Yep.
It's very
Mhm.
common. You open the door and you walk in, and all you hear is slurping.
Right.
Everyone's slurping their noodles, and it's making that.
Mm.
And didn't your mother always tell you in the West,
Yes.
chew with your mouth closed, don't make noise like that?
And that's a really rude to
It would be
slurp
rude.
when you're drinking soup.
Soup,
Eating
right.
soup, drinking
That's
soup.
right. So
Yes.
noodles are often served in a broth. It's kind of like a soup.
Very much so. Like
Right.
chicken noodle soup would be something we'd be familiar
the unaware
with.
Westerner would walk into a noodle shop in Tokyo and be
And it's a
stunned.
slurp
and
fest.
It's a slurp fest, right?
Yeah.
And you slurp, of course. First of all, it cools it down. 'Cause
Uh-huh.
you may be eating it hot, but there's also cold noodle dishes that.
Or it could be that the kois are all sucking up the water that they're in.
So you got to eat it fast
Get it.
before they do.
Go get it.
Yeah.
You bet.
It was explained to me quite earnestly that actually it tastes better when you suck air through
Uh-huh.
as you eat it, as the noodles enter your mouth. It just helps the flavor.
Interesting.
So-
and in fact, so does wine when you taste it. When you're tasting it,
You sip it and
initially,
you can, and
if you bring it in with some air, it will exaggerate the flavors.
That's a wine slurp, isn't it?
That's a wine slurp.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, Ernest Lee wasn't he a senator from Louisiana?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he was actually, and his cousin.
Go ahead, it's all yours.
That's going to be cut, right?
Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! We've got people writing in asking me to set you up like that. Really? Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground, and I think that it's time to get out of here. It's still oops, your culture showing. We've been infatuated with food. The last podcast and this podcast.
Everyone's infatuated.
If I remember,
it's basic to life.
Well, it's sort of like
it's one of
the
life's great
central-
pleasures.
It is.
The Chinese say, that it is the first great pleasure.
Do they?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Dean Foster, the person who knows more about cultures in the world than anyone else out there, at least that's what he tells us, and who's been exploding all day today. And
I only say that because my publisher tells me that.
is that right?
Yes.
Well, that's good for them. Probably that's in their best interest, but okay. And that exploding thing, I'm thinking it's something you ate. which goes right along with what we're talking about here today. Look, your culture's still showing, and that's what's going on.
And you
here,
got to
all
do
right?
something about that.
That's right. And thank you very much for that. And I'm still Tom Peterson. And Torrin, are you still here?
I'm still here.
Okay. Torrin's still here, and we're heading on our way out of here for this one. So, oops.
Your culture's showing.
Thank you. Smell you. Just want to bother you one last time to say we're a brand new podcast here at Oops, Your Culture's Showing, and we could really use your help by subscribing to the podcast. And not to mention that if you hung around this long and you liked what you heard, well, this makes it just easier for you to get the podcast. They'll pop up for you whenever they're released, so you can listen to them on your phone or your computer or however you listen to them. And it's easy to get, too. Just subscribe using iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts from. It really isn't hard, and we could really use your support. So, from all of us here at Oops, Your Culture's Showing, thanks.